Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Faylene and Doug Grant. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Faylene Eves Grant was born on December 31, 1965, in Navajo County, Arizona. Eventually, she moved to Gilbert, which is 22 miles east of Phoenix. Faylene identified as a Mormon, and she was an extremely enthusiastic follower of her religion. At some point, she married, had 2 children, and divorced. In 1993, 27-year-old Faylene met a man named Doug Grant in a gym near Phoenix, and the couple became romantically involved. Doug was also 27 and divorced. He had 1 child from his first marriage. To make a living, Doug operated his own vitamin and supplement business and consulted to NBA basketball teams like the Phoenix Suns and the Miami Heat. According to Doug, his business eventually earned about $1 million a month in revenue. 4 months after their first date, Doug and Faylene married. They went on to have 2 sons together. At various times during their marriage, Doug had affairs. Faylene claimed that God told her to divorce Doug because of the infidelity. Doug claimed that he wasn't having an affair at that moment, although he admitted to being unfaithful in the past. Faylene filed for divorce in June 2000, and it was finalized that same year. Not surprisingly, Doug moved on pretty quickly from the divorce. He met a 19-year-old woman named Hillary DeWitt. She was 16 years younger than Doug. The couple became romantically involved and planned on getting married. In 2001, Faylene changed her mind about being divorced. Now she claimed that God told her she needed to put her family back together. Doug was surprised by this, but thought that marrying Faylene again was a good idea. They were once married, they divorced. What could possibly go wrong by getting married again? On July 27, 2001, the couple married at the Excalibur Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. On September 24 of that same year, Doug and Faylene visited Timpanogos National Park in Utah. During this visit, something happened which led to Faylene becoming injured. Doug took her to a hospital where she was treated for scrapes and bruises. According to the story supplied by the couple, Faylene had a vision while standing not far from a rock wall overlooking a 60-foot cliff. She claimed that she could see an image of Jesus in the clouds. Doug just happened to take a photograph of Faylene in that very moment. Right after the photograph was taken, Faylene climbed on the rock wall. Her knee gave out, and she traveled off the cliff. She slammed into a large pine tree, which slowed her descent and prevented her from being seriously injured. Despite the story about the pine tree, it was hard to believe that Faylene actually fell 60 feet. But this was the narrative she decided to stick with. Faylene was released from the hospital after 90 minutes. She was very sore from her injuries, but should not have been in any danger of dying from them. Instead of traveling home immediately, the couple stayed with friends in the area so Faylene could recover a bit. Faylene told one of her friends, quote, "I just fell, and I felt like I was floating, and I didn't scream out," unquote. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. Doug and Faylene flew back to Gilbert, Arizona on September 26, 2001. Faylene was still not feeling well due to the high-velocity journey through the pine tree. She was having trouble sleeping. A physician assistant named Chad White, who was a friend of Doug's, prescribed Ambien to Faylene, but told Doug not to fill the prescription without checking with him first. On the next morning, September 27, 2001, at 7:42 a.m., Doug called Chad and told him that he woke up and found Faylene unconscious in the bathtub located in the master bathroom. Chad asked Doug if he called 911. Doug indicated that he did not. At 7:46 a.m., Chad called 911 as he made his way to Doug's residence. Emergency responders transported Faylene to a hospital where she was pronounced dead at 4:37 p.m. She had a lot of Ambien in her system, but her cause of death was drowning. Doug claimed that he had actually called 911 himself, but the police were unable to find any evidence of this. Despite this, Faylene's death was ruled an accident. The medical examiner indicated there was no evidence of homicide. On October 20, 2001, less than a month after Faylene died, Doug married Hillary DeWitt. Again, Hillary was Doug's romantic interest after Faylene divorced him. Doug and Hillary went on to have a daughter together. It appeared as though Doug was in the clear. He had put Faylene in his rearview mirror. He was ready to move on with his life. The problem is, years later, the police decided to reinvestigate the case. They came to believe that Doug Grant had murdered his wife. In 2005, Doug was indicted on a charge of first-degree murder. His trial started in November 2008. On March 24, 2009, after the jury deliberated for 12 days, he was found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. The jury also added 3 aggravating factors. Doug committed the crime in an especially cruel manner. His motive was money, and the offense caused physical, emotional, and financial harm to the victim's family. With these aggravating factors, the presumptive term for manslaughter was 5 years in prison, and the maximum was 12.5 years. On May 15, 2009, Doug Grant was sentenced to 5 years in prison. After he was released, he resumed his life with Hillary and his children. Now moving to my analysis. Faylene Grant kept a journal and wrote extensively about religion and her feelings. She repeatedly suggested that she felt as though she was destined to die young. Faylene communicated the same sentiment to friends and family members. Here are a few examples of Faylene predicting her death. She wrote, quote, "I've had the knowledge given to me that my time on earth is very short," unquote. And, quote, "It is Heavenly Father's will that I leave this mortal sphere to fulfill a mission on the other side of the veil," unquote. To a friend, Faylene wrote, quote, "I do know we'll still be together in the spirit, and that comforts me. I also know the time will pass quickly, and then we'll all be together," unquote. On another occasion, she wrote, quote, "Well, girl, this is it. My last letter, I don't think they have mail delivery from where I'm going," unquote. And Faylene indicated that she was choosing to give up the life she had. Faylene had this persistent belief, which may be more accurately characterized as a delusion, that there was a baby girl named Nicole in the Preexistence. This is also referred to as the premortal existence. Mormons believe that all human beings exist in this realm as spirit children before being born. So this girl, Nicole, was waiting to be born on Earth. Faylene believed that Doug's lover, Hillary DeWitt, was going to be the mother of Nicole. Faylene would leave this Earth, ascend to the celestial kingdom, which is like the Mormons' version of heaven, meet with Nicole in the Preexistence. Then Hillary would give birth to Nicole on Earth. This fit into the idea that Faylene needed to get out of the way of progress. Nicole was a premortal prom queen just waiting for her celestial Uber, and Faylene was a speed bump on the way to exaltation. Faylene wanted Hillary to take over her role as a mother when she died. This included Hillary marrying Doug. Faylene wrote, quote, "This desire for you to be married immediately and to see you sitting together as husband and wife at my funeral has been so strong," unquote. In a letter to her children, Faylene wrote, quote, "I have asked Hillary to sit at the table as your mother while I'm away. Treat Hillary with the utmost love and respect, and you will always make me very happy," unquote. Faylene never talked about how she would die or suggested that she would take any steps to cause her death. However, a reasonable person could look at her writings and think that she had a death wish. The police never turned the writings over to the medical examiner. Later, the medical examiner indicated that if he had read the journal, it would have changed his opinion about the manner of death. This would have made him lean toward Faylene being responsible. Not surprisingly, Faylene's writings represented a substantial component of Doug's defense. This brings me to the question, was Doug Grant guilty of any crime in connection with Faylene's death? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. Doug Grant had a long history of infidelity. He just couldn't seem to stop cheating no matter what. After getting divorced and connecting with Hillary, Doug accepted Faylene's invitation to marry again. This seems like such a strange decision. He had already moved on with Hillary, who he would eventually marry. Why was he interested in Faylene? Did he accept this offer in order to have better access to kill Faylene? After marrying Faylene for the second time, there were 200 phone calls between Doug and Hillary. This is consistent with the theory that Doug was not giving up on his relationship with Hillary. So he was married to Faylene, but he was really interested in someone else. 3 days before she died, Faylene Grant was injured in a mysterious incident, which supposedly involved her traveling over a 60-foot cliff. If she really did fall off this cliff, Faylene should have been seriously injured or killed, yet she ended up with relatively minor injuries. On September 27, 2001, Faylene Grant died under mysterious circumstances, drowning in her own bathtub. Doug Grant said that he found her in the bathtub and called 911, but there is no evidence of him making that call. Faylene had a large amount of Ambien in her system. However, the physician assistant, Chad, said that he told Doug not to fill the prescription without talking to him first. Doug filled the prescription right after getting it. He seemed eager for Faylene to have this sedative. Faylene's daughter Jenna claimed that the door to the master bathroom was locked at 7:40 a.m. on the day her mother died. This was right around the time Doug would have found Faylene in the bathtub. Jenna also said that, in a hospital hallway prior to her mother's death, Doug told her, quote, "If your mom wakes up, she might say weird things," unquote. A few hours after Faylene's death, Doug met with Hillary in a park. Less than a month later, he married her. Doug collected $300,000 in life insurance after his wife died. Prior to her death, the couple had applied for additional life insurance for Faylene. The new benefit amount was $860,000. Doug did not collect the higher amount because the documentation was not yet complete. The state's theory of the crime was that Doug manipulated Faylene by amplifying and encouraging her bizarre beliefs. There is some evidence to support this theory. Faylene implied that Doug was coming up with some of the strange ideas when she wrote, quote, "It just touched me that this is another reason I must have faith in Doug's vision. He dreams it every night now," unquote. And, quote, "I've accepted it because my husband has told me he dreams about it every night, and it's God's plan," unquote. Faylene noted that Doug was supportive of her bizarre behavior when she wrote, quote, "I cut up all of my maternity garment tops tonight. Doug sat by me for moral support. That was hard. It feels sad to know I'll never have another baby on earth, but I know I will someday, however that works," unquote. Maybe Doug was encouraging Faylene because he knew that she would bear the blame for her death based on her unusual behavior. Now moving to the exculpatory factors, Faylene may have been delusional and was fascinated with death. She predicted her death many times and was obsessed with the afterlife. In all her writings, she never wrote anything negative about Doug. She did not appear to be afraid of him being violent. Faylene specifically indicated that she was looking forward to Doug's lover Hillary taking over her job as mother. She also wanted Hillary to marry Doug. Testifying about Faylene's death, the medical examiner said there was no evidence to support homicide. The police withheld Faylene's writings from the medical examiner and could not offer any believable reason for doing so. This was not the only failure on the part of the police during the investigation. They also failed to interview key witnesses, including a few members of Doug's family who had contact with Faylene right before she died. One detective implied that the family members would have been biased. Therefore, there was no point in even talking to them. During her testimony, Faylene's daughter Jenna said that the door to the master bathroom was locked, but this was the first time she ever mentioned that. When she was interviewed by the police, Jenna never said anything about the door being locked. If Doug really killed his wife for money, why didn't he wait for the insurance documentation to be completed and collect the additional $560,000? To explain the 200 phone calls between Doug and Hillary, Doug's defense claimed that Faylene made many of those calls. Considering how Faylene was a big fan of Hillary, this seems possible. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I believe that Doug Grant was guilty of any crime? I believe that Doug was guilty of manslaughter in reality, but I am not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed any crime. Faylene could have died by accident or due to her own behavior. There were serious problems with the investigation into her death. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Doug Grant married Faylene for the second time, intending to assist her in her journey to the celestial kingdom. He played along with her delusions and may have even added to them. Faylene may have been a conspirator in this plan, like she was ready to make the trip, but she did not fully understand what she was doing. Mental health factors may have played a part in her decision. For example, delusional thinking. When the couple was in Utah, they moved forward with their plan, but something went wrong and Faylene survived. 3 days later, they completed the job. It's impossible to know exactly who did what, like how much did each person contribute to the death. It's also impossible to know if Doug did anything wrong. Maybe this was all Faylene. Doug knew that Faylene's journal entries would create doubt about his involvement. Essentially, his wife gave him a free pass through her writings. Despite this, the jury had a feeling that Doug committed some type of crime. A few members of the jury implied that they did not like Doug very much. One jury member suggested that the verdict was partially based on a gut feeling. In a sense, Doug counted on his wife's reputation to protect him from prosecution, but failed to calculate the destructive influence of his own reputation. His history of infidelity was not well received. If Doug was actually guilty of murder, he paid a very small price. If he was not guilty, the outcome of this case was an injustice. Just like Faylene's life was a mystery, the circumstances of her death will forever remain obscured. Those are my thoughts on the case of Faylene and Doug Grant. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.